We can imagine a situation in which each instrument could do its own work at the word of command or by intelligent anticipation, like the set status of Daedalus or the tripods made by Hephaestus, of which the poet relates to. Of their own motion they entered the conclave of gods on Olympus. A shuttle would then weave of itself, and a plectrum would do its own harp playing. In this situation, managers would not need subordinates and masters would not need slaves. The instruments of which we have just been speaking are instruments of production, but property is an instrument of action. From the shuttle there issues something which is different and exists apart from the immediate act of its use. But from garments or beds there comes only the one fact of their use. We may add that of diff- are since production and action are different in kind and both of them need instruments, those instruments must also show a corresponding difference. Life, if instruments, must also show a corresponding difference. Life is action and not production, and therefore the slave is a servant in the sphere of action. The term article of property is used in the same way in which the term part is also used. A part is not only a part of something other than itself, it also belongs entirely to that other thing. In the same It is the same with an article of property. Accordingly, while the master is merely the master of the slave, and does not belong to him, the slave is not only the slave of his master, he also belongs entirely to him. From these considerations, we can see clearly that this is the nature of the slave, and what is his capacity. Anybody who by his nature is not his own man, isn't his own man but another's, is by his nature a slave. Anybody who being a man is an article of property, is another man's an article of property, is an instrument intended for the purpose of action, inseparable from its possessor. There is a principle of rule and subordination in nature at large. It appears especially in the realm of animate creation by virtue of that principle, the soul rules the body, and by virtue of it, the master, who possesses the rational faculty of the soul, rules the slave, who possesses only bodily powers and the faculty of the understanding, the directions given by another's reason. But nature, though she intends, does not always succeed in achieving a clear distinction between men born to be masters and men born to be slaves. We have next to consider whether there are or are not some people who are by nature such as are here defined, whether, in other words, there are some people for whom slavery is the better and just condition, or whether the reverse is the case and all slavery is contrary to nature. The issue is not difficult, or consider it empirically on the basis of the actual facts. The relation of ruler and ruled is one of those things which are not only necessary, but also beneficial, and there are species in which a distinction is already marked immediately at birth between those of its members who are intended for being ruled and those who are intended to rule. There are also many kinds both of ruling and ruled elements. Moreover, the rule which is exercised over the better sort of subjects is a better sort of rule, as for example, rule exercised over a man is better than rule over an animal. The reason is that the value of something which is produced increases with the value of those contributing to it, and where one element rules and the other is ruled, there is something which they jointly produce. In all cases where there is a compound constituted of more than one part, but forming one common entity, whether the parts be continuous or discrete, a ruling element and a ruled can always be traced. This characteristic is present in animate beings by virtue of the whole constitution of nature. For even in things which are inanimate, there is a sort of ruling principle, such as is to be found, for example, in the musical harmony. But such considerations perhaps belong to a more popular method of inquiry. and we may content ourselves here with saying that animate beings are composed, in the first place, of soul and body, with the former naturally ruling and the latter naturally ruled, when investigating the natural state of things. We must fix our attention not on those which are in a corrupt, but on those which are in natural condition. It follows that we must consider the man who is in the best state both of body and soul, and in whom the rule of soul over body is accordingly evident, for with vicious people, or those in a vicious condition, the reverse would often appear to be true, the body ruling the soul as the result of their evil and unnatural condition. It is possible, as we have said, to observe first in animate beings the presence of a ruling authority, both of the sort exercised by a master over slaves, and of the sort exercised by a statesman over fellow citizens. The soul rules the body with the authority of a master, reason rules the appetite with the authority of a statesman or a monarch. In this sphere, it is clearly natural and beneficial to the body that it should be ruled by the soul, and again it is natural and beneficial to the affective part of the soul that it should be ruled by the reason and the rational part, whereas the equality of the two elements, or their reverse relation, is always detrimental. The same principle is true of the relation of man to another animal's to another animal of man to other animals. Same prince. Tame animals have a better nature than wild, and it is better for all such animals that they should be ruled by man, because they then get the benefit of preservation. Again, the relation of male to female is naturally that of the superior to the inferior, of the ruling to the ruled. Based. Based signal moment. This general principle must similarly hold good of all human beings generally. We may thus conclude that all men who differ from others as much as the body differs from the soul, or an animal from a man, and this is the case with all whose function is bodily service, and who produce their best when they supply such service. All such by nature slaves. In their case, as in other cases just mentioned, it is better to be ruled by a master. Someone is thus a slave by nature if he is capable of becoming the property of another, and for this reason does actually become another's property. And if he participates in reason to the extent of apprehending it in another, though destitute of it himself. Other animals do not apprehend reason, but obey their instincts. Even so, there is little divergence in the way they are used. Both of them, slaves and tame animals, provide bodily assistance in satisfying essential needs. It is nature's intention also to erect a physical difference between the bodies of free men and those of the slaves, giving the latter strength for the menial duties of life, but making the former upright in carriage, and though useless for physical labor, useful for the various purposes of civic life, a life which tends, as it develops, to be divided into military service and the occupations of peace. The contrary of nature's intention, however, often happens. There are some slaves who have the bodies of free men, as there are others who have a free man's soul. But if there were men who were as distinguished as their bodies alone as are the statues of the gods, all would agree that the others should be their slaves. And if this is true when the difference is one of the body, it may be affirmed with the greater justice when the difference is one of the soul, though it is not as easy to see the beauty of the soul as it is to see that of the body. It is thus clear that just as some are by nature free, so others are by nature slaves, and for these latter the condition of slavery is both beneficial and just. Legal or conventional slavery, the divergence of views about its justice, and the reason for this divergence. In spite of the divergence, there is a general consensus, though it is not clearly formulated, that superiority in goodness justifies the owning and controlling of slaves. Granted such superiority in the master, slavery is a beneficial and just system. But it is easy to see that those who hold an opposite view are also, in a way, correct. Slavery and slave are terms which are used in two different senses, for there is also a kind of slave and of slavery which owes its existence to law. The law in question is a kind of understanding that those vanquished in war are held to belong to the victors. That slavery can be justified by such a convention is a principle against which a number of jurists bring an indictment of illegality, as one might against an orator. They regard it as a detestable notion that someone who is subjugated by force should become the slave and subject of one who has the capacity to subjugate him, and his superior in power, even among men of judgment. There are some who accept this and some who do not. The cause of the divergence of view and the reason why the opposing contentions overlap one another is to be found in the following consideration. There is a sense in which good qualities, when they are furnished with the right resources, have the greatest power to subjugate, and a victor is always preeminent in respect of some sort of good. It thus appears that power never goes without good qualities, and the dispute between the two sides thus comes to turn exclusively on the point of justice. In this matter, some think that being just consists in goodwill, while others hold that the rule of the stronger is in itself justice. If these different positions are distinguished from one another, no other argument has any cogency or even plausibility against the view that one who is superior in goodness ought to rule over and be the master of his inferiors. There are some who, clinging as they think to a sort of justice, for law is a sort of justice, assume that slavery in war is just. Simultaneously, however, they contradict that assumption, for in the first place it is possible that the original cause of a war may not be just, and in the second place, no one would ever say that someone who does not deserve to be in a condition of slavery is really a slave. If such a view were accepted, the result would be that men reputed to be of the highest rank would be turned into slaves or the children of slaves if they or their parents happened to be captured and sold into slavery. This is the reason why they do not like to call such people slaves, but prefer to confine the term to barbarians. But by this use of terms, they are in reality only seeking to express the same idea of the natural slave which we began by mentioning. They are driven, in effect, to admit that there are some who are everywhere slaves, and others who are everywhere free. The same line of thought is followed in regard to good birth. Greeks regard themselves as well born, not only in their own country, but absolutely and in all places. But they regard barbarians as well born only in their own country, thus assuming that there is one sort of good birth, that freedom which is absolute, and another which is only relative. We are reminded of what Helen says in the play of Theodectes, scion of gods, by both descent alike, who would presume to call me serving maid? When they use such terms as these, men are using the one criterion of the presence or absence of goodness for the purpose of distinguishing between slave and freeman, or again between the well-born and the low-born. They are claiming that just as man is born of man and animal of animal, so a Good man is born of good men. It is often the case, however, that nature wishes but fails to achieve this result. It is thus clear that there is some reason for the divergence of view which has been discussed. It is not true that the one group are natural slaves and the other natural freemen. It is also clear that there are cases where such a distinction exists, and that here it is beneficial and just that the former should actually be a slave and the latter a master, the one being ruled and the other exercising the kind of rule for which he is naturally intended and therefore acting as master. But a wrong exercise of this rule by a master is a thing which is disadvantageous for both master and slave. The part and the whole, like the body and the soul, have an identical interest, and the slave is a part of the master in the sense of being a living but separate part of his body. There is thus a community of interest and a relation of friendship between master and slave, when both of them naturally merit the position in which they stand. But the reverse is true, when matters are otherwise and slavery rests merely on legal sanction, and superior power. The training of slaves in the art of using them properly, how they may be justly acquired. The argument makes it clear that the rule of the master and that of the statesman are different from one another, and that it is not the case that all kinds of rule are, as some thinkers hold, identical. One kind of rule is exercised over those who are naturally free, the other over slaves. And again, the rule exercised over a household by its head is that of a monarch. For all households are monarchically governed, while the rule of the statesman is rule over freemen, and while the rule oh wait, while the rule of the statesman is a rule over freemen and equals. Now masters are not so termed in virtue of any knowledge which they have acquired, but in virtue of their own endearment. And the same is true of slaves and freemen generally. But there may be a kind of knowledge which belongs to masters, and another which belongs to slaves, and the latter should be the nature of the knowledge taught by the man of Syracuse, who instructed servants for pay in the discharge of their ordinary duties. Instruction in such subjects might be extended further. It might include, for example, the art of cookery and other similar forms of skilled domestic service. The reason why this might be done is that the duties differ. Some are of a higher standing, even if others are needed more, as the proverb says. Slave may go before slave, and master may go before master. All such forms of knowledge are necessarily of the servile character, but there is also a form of knowledge belonging to the master, which consists in the use of slaves. A master is such in virtue not of acquiring, but of using slaves. This knowledge belonging to the master is something which has no great or majestic character. The master must simply know how to command what the slave must know how to do. This is why those who are in a position to escape from being troubled by it delegate the management of slaves to a steward, and spend on politics or philosophy the time they are thus able to save. The art of acquiring slaves for ownership differs both from the art of being a master and from that of being a slave. That is to say, when it is justly practiced, for in that case it is a particular form of the art of war and of the art of hunting. This should be an adequate account of the distinction between master and slave. Prosperity in the art of acquisition, the art of household management, is distinct from that of acquisition. It has to provide a stock of requisites for the household, and the different methods by which this is done produce different ways of life: the hunting, the pastoral, the agricultural, and so forth. Nature intends and provides the requisites for household use, and the acquisition of such requisites is a natural mode of acquisition. Properly in them is limited to the amount required by household. Property in them is limited to the amount required by household needs, and it is the nature of all true wealth to be so limited. We may now study generally all forms of property and the art of acquiring it, following our normal method, for we have already seen that the slave is an article of property. The first problem which may be raised is whether the art of acquiring property is identical with that of household management, or is a part of it, or is ancillary to it, and whether, if it is ancillary, it is so in the sense in which the art of making shuttles is ancillary to the art of weaving, or in the sense in which the art of casting bronze is ancillary to the art of sculpture. These are ancillary in a different way, and the one provides instruments and the other the material. By material, we mean the substance from which a product is made, as wool, for instance, serves the weaver and bronze the sculptor. That the art of household management is not identical with the art of acquiring property is obvious. It is the function of the latter simply to provide, but it is the function of the former to use what has been provided. For what art can there be other than the household, than of the household? Wait, what? For what art can there be other than that of household management, which will use the resources of the household? The question whether the art of acquisition is a part of it, or a separate art altogether, is one which admits of a divergence of views. If someone who is engaged in acquisition has to consider from what different sources he can get goods and property, and if property and wealth include many different parts, we shall first have to consider whether farming is a part of the art of acquisition or a separate art. Indeed, we shall have to ask that question. Man, has it been 22 minutes already? Generally, in regard to all modes of occupation and gain which are concerned with the provision of substance, there are a number of different modes of substance, and the result is a number of different ways of life among both animals and human beings. It is impossible to live without means of substance, and among the animals we may notice that differences in the means of substance have produced consequent differences in ways of life. Some wild animals live in herds, and others are scattered in isolation, according as they find it convenient for the purpose of getting substance, some of them being carnivorous, some herbivorous, and some again omnivorous. Nature has thus distinguished their ways of life with a view to their greater comfort and their better attainment of these things. Indeed, as the same sort of food is not naturally agreeable to all the members of a class, and as different sorts suit different species. There are also different ways of life, even within the class of carnivorous animals, and equally in that of the herbivorous. The same is also true of men. Their ways of life also differ considerably. The most indolent are the pastoral nomads. They acquire a substance from domestic animals at their leisure and without any trouble, and as it is necessary for their flocks to move for the sake of pasturage, they also are forced to follow and to cultivate what may be called a living farm. There are others who live by hunting, and of these again, there are different kinds according to their different modes of hunting. Some live by being freebooters, some who live near lakes and marshes and rivers, or by a sea which is suitable for the purpose, gain a livelihood by fishing. Others live by hunting birds or wild animals. Most of mankind, however, derive their livelihood from the soil and from cultivated plants. The different ways of life, at any rate, if we take into action only those who follow an occupation dependent on their own labors and do not provide themselves with substance by exchange in petty trade, may be roughly classified as pastoral, freebooting, fishing, hunting, and farming. But there are some who live comfortably by means of combination of different methods, and who supplement the shortcomings of one way of life when it tends to fall short of being sufficient in itself by adding some other way. For example, some combine the pastoral way of life with the freebooting, others combine farming with hunting, and similar combinations may be made of other ways of life as need impels people so they shape their lives. This kind of capacity for acquisition is evidently given by nature to all living beings from the moment when they are first born to the days when their growth is finished. There are animals which, when their offspring is born, bring forth along with it food enough to support it until it can provide for itself. This is the case with those which reproduce themselves by grubs, and with animals which do so by eggs. Animals which are viviparous have food for their offspring in themselves for a certain time of the nature of what is called milk. Likewise, we must evidently believe that similar provision is made for adults. Plants exist for the benefit of animals, and some animals exist for the benefit of others. Those which are domesticated serve human beings for use as well as for food. Wild animals, too, in most cases, if not all, serve to furnish us not only with food but also with other kinds of assistance, such as the provision of clothing and similar aids to life. Accordingly, if nature makes nothing purposeless or in vain, all animals must have been made by nature for the sake of men. Based, it also follows that the art of war is in some sense a natural mode of acquisition. Hunting is a part of that art, and hunting ought to be practiced not only against wild animals, but also against human beings who are intended by nature to be ruled by others and refuse to obey that intention because this sort of war is naturally just. It follows that one form of acquisition is naturally a part of the art of household management in the sense that the manager of a household must have available or ensure the availability of a supply of objects which are capable of being stored and are either necessary for life or useful to the association of the city, polis, or the household. These are the objects which may be regarded as constituting true wealth, for the amount of household property which suffices for a good life is not unlimited, nor of the nature described by Solon in the verse. There is no bound to wealth stands fixed for men. There is a bound fixed, as is it also the same in the means required by the other arts. All the instruments needed by all the arts are limited both in number and size, and wealth may it be defined as a number of instruments used in a household or city. It is thus clear that there is a natural art of acquisition which has to be practiced by managers of households and statesmen, and the reason for its existence is also clear. The art of acquisition, as a way of acquiring property distinct from the natural way of the household, it originates in exchange when exchange is conducted through the medium of currency and for profit. The view thus arises that the art of acquisition is especially concerned with accumulating a fund of currency. But there is a contrary view that currency is a mere convention, and not the true object of the art of acquisition. This contrary view has its truth. There is a natural form of the art of acquisition which is not distinct from, but a part of, the art of household management. This natural form of acquisition aims at the accumulation not of currency, but of true wealth, and therefore not at the infinite, but at the finite. But there is a second form of the art of getting property, which is particularly called, and which it is just to call, the art of acquisition. It is the second form which gives rise to the opinion that there is no limit to wealth and property. There are many who hold it to be identical with the other form previously mentioned because it has affinities with it. In fact, it is not identical, and yet it is not far removed. The other form previously mentioned is natural. The second form is not natural, but is rather the product of a certain sort of experience and skill. We may start our discussion of this second from form from the following point of view. All articles of property have two possible uses. Both of these uses belong to the article as such, but they do not belong to it in the same manner or to the same extent. The one use is proper and peculiar to the article concerned, the other is not. A shoe, for example, can be used both for wearing and for exchange. Both of these uses are uses of the shoe as such. Even the man who exchanges a shoe in return for money or food with someone who needs the article is using the shoe as a shoe. But since the shoe has not been made for the purpose of being exchanged, the use which he is making of it is not its proper and peculiar use. The same is true of all other articles of property. Exchange is possible in regard to them all. It arises from the natural facts of the case and is due to some men having more and others less, and suffices for their needs. We can thus see that retail trade is not naturally a part of the art of acquisition. If that were the case, it would only be necessary to practice exchange to the extent that sufficed for the needs of both parties. In the first form of association, which is the household, it is obvious that there is no purpose to be served by the art of exchange. Such a purpose only emerged when the scope of association had already been extended. The members of the household had shared all things in common. Those who lived separately from one another had at their disposal a number of different things, which they had to exchange as need arose, by way of barter, much as many barbarian tribes need arose by way of barter, much, gosh darn it, much as many barbarian tribes still do to this day. On this basis, things which are useful are exchanged themselves and directly for similar useful things, but the transaction does not go any further. Wine, for instance, is given or taken in return for wheat, and other similar commodities are similarly bartered for one another. When used in this way, the art of exchange is not contrary to nature, nor in any way a form of the art of acquisition. Exchange simply serves to satisfy the natural requirements of sufficiency. Nonetheless, it was from exchange as thus practiced that the art of acquisition developed in the sort of way we might reasonably expect. The supply of men's needs came to depend on more foreign sources as men began to import themselves what they lacked and to export what they had in subordinates, and in this way, the use of money, currency, was inevitably instituted.
Fuck you. Hello?
Hello?
Howdy.
Yeah, I was doing a stream where I was reading Aristotle's Politics before you streamed.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I read
I
all
got
the I read all the
notification, I just didn't check it, I guess.
I read all the vase parts already.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
I read the part where he was like defending slavery and the part where he was talking about the relationship with the man and the woman.
Nice.
But yeah, my stream's still going. It's at 39 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But
So now we're dual streaming. We're both
yeah.
collabing on each other's streams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish Paradise Lost most likely since I'm on Friday in the game, and I'm pretty sure it only goes to Friday in Paradise Lost. Because, you know, Postal 2, like, the main game and all of the DLC goes by day of the week for the level you're on. Oh boy, frame drops. Might have to fucking disable the monitor again because fucking bullshit. I'm gonna check something. Hold on. How to switch to Windows 7 basic colors. Sway. Because yeah, this frame drop is getting really fucking annoying. Whenever I switch it out of Arrow and into basic, that seems to fix it, at least temporarily, but then it automatically switches back when I restart the computer. So, change color scheme, where is that? Display, where the fuck is change calibrate color? Okay. Cool.
What would Rob O'Donnell do?
Next.
He'd make a plan and follow through.
Next. Just fucking work, damn it. I just want to click basic like I did before. Like when the game crashes, it just lets me go to basic, but for some reason, it's being stupid. Wait, did that fix it?
The reason for this was that all the naturally necessary commodities were not easily portable, and people therefore agreed for the purpose of their exchanges to give and receive some commodity which itself belonged to the category of useful things and possessed the advantage of being easily handled for the purpose of getting the necessities of life. Such commodities were iron, silver, and other similar metals. At first their value was simply determined by their size and weight, but finally a stamp was imposed on the metal which, serving as a definite indication of the quantity, would save people the trouble of determining the value of each occasion. When in this way a currency had once been instituted, there next arose from the necessary process of exchange a second form of the art of acquisition, the one which consists in retail trade. At first, we may allow, it was perhaps practiced in a simple way, but in process of time and as the result of experience, it was practiced with a more studied technique, which sought to discover the sources from which and the methods by which the greatest profit could be made. The result has been the emergence of the view that the art of acquisition is especially concerned with currency, and that its function consists in an ability to discover the sources from which a fund of money can be derived in support of this view.
Yeah, I don't have a change color scheme option. This is really
It is
annoying.
urged that the art is one which produces wealth and
Can I get
money.
the game to crash so it'll fucking just do it automatically? Okay, this is gonna sound really stupid, but I'm gonna launch Postal 3 because for some reason Postal 3 seems to make it crash more often, and making it crash will ironically let me fix it. which I think is retarded, but that's what we're gonna do because I don't wanna turn off this monitor, and I don't wanna, end the stream by restarting the computer. So we're gonna do a really ass backwards way of doing this by intentionally making it crash.
How other way would you do it?
There's supposed to be an option, but I just don't have that option in my settings, so the only way I can seem to trigger it is by intentionally crashing.
Yeah, you do literally everything the ass backwards way.
It's true, but look, that's the thing, right? I'm a problem solver sometimes. And sometimes, some problems call for some unconventional solutions. Realistically, all I gotta do is put in a new graphics card, but then I gotta install it and shit.
Well, what would Ron Boy Donald do?
Postal 3 is working just fine.
How do you? What's his name?
What the fuck?
Ron Boy Tuttle. What's his name?
Did it finally crash? Yes, it crashed. Thank you.
Who's
Thank
the
God.
ice skater?
Who?
The ice skater, Ron Boy Donald or whatever his name is. What's his name?
Brian Boitano.
Brian Boitano. Okay.
Yeah,
What would
Brian
he do?
Boitano do if he were here today? He'd make a plan and follow through. That's what Brian Boitano do. Let me just fucking end this already. Fuck.
Why the heck were they so obsessed with an ice skater?
It's a callback to like, granted, it's still there's the question of why, but it's a callback to the Spirit of Christmas, the Jesus versus Santa, which was like, it was before the actual show. It was the second one because they did Jesus versus Frosty and then they did Jesus versus Santa. See, now it's working fine. Now that I've intentionally crashed it, and that let me change the color scheme. Now it's working perfectly.
By the way,
so stupid.
did you see what the name of my stream is?
I did not see what the name of your stream is. Hold on. I gotta pull this up real quick so that I can see the chat again. Okay, well, now I'm gonna delete this stream and start again. Fucking bullshit.
Delete the stream.
Yes. Because, it showed my fucking email because Steam showed up on the screen because the fucking display glitched out and showed up on the screen stream. So now, I have to go into YouTube Studio, delete this stream, and start another one.
Dang.
So it defeats the whole purpose of me avoiding restarting the computer. But on the plus side, it also let me switch to Windows 7 Basic, which made it so that I don't have to do it again, because now it's not going to crash, most likely. I'm just going to do this. Postal to Paradise Lost Stream 3. And I'm just going to pretend the other one didn't happen. And by pretend the other one didn't happen, I mean I'm going to fully acknowledge it, because like right now I'm literally talking about it. So yeah, there was an issue with the previous stream. I got it working now, so we're good.
Wow, Fugitive Red Eye just went live.
I know, right? Who'd have thought?
Man, too bad I'm too bad I'm talking to you. I could be watching that shit.
Right. But yeah, now there shouldn't be any issues. This stream's working good now, so we're good. Fuck you, tagging. I guess because I have my gun out, to be fair. And I'm also just walking out of Al-Qaeda's hideout because they're helping me out right now. Because Al-Qaeda, for some reason, is like peace-loving and shit in this DLC. And like they're hippies who want me to get them some weed.
What should I read? I was watching a video that was saying Carl Jung was an anti-Semite that said that Sigmund Freud did Jewish that Freud's psychology was Jewish magic or something.
Did he ever actually say that?
I don't know. It was a weird video. Like everybody in the comments was saying like it was like a bad video.
Okay. The dope fish lives. Well, there we go.
But I think it's funny though. Like clearly, Carl Jung wasn't an anti-Semite with all of his he had like a bunch of Jewish friends, and like
Yeah.
literally helped and literally helped the I can't remember, was it the FBI or something, was it CIA, I can't remember what it was. He helped like the government though against the Nazis in World War II, I think.
Can't even tell where the hell I am on the map. I guess that's the point, because I gotta get out of the sewer before it'll tell me where I'm at.
You know what? Why don't I just read Industrial Society and Its Future?
Based.
Should I read the introduction? Maybe. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. They have greatly increased the life expectancy of those of us who live in advanced countries, but they have destabilized society, have made life unfulfilling, have subjugated human beings to indignities, have led to widespread psychological suffering. In the third world, to physical
Man, I wish I knew how to get the hell out of here.
suffering as well, and have inflicted severe damage on the natural world. The continued development of technology will worsen the situation. It will certainly subject human beings to greater indignities and inflict greater damage on the natural world. It will probably lead to greater social disruption and psychological suffering, and it may lead to increased physical
Oh, this
suffering
is
even
the
in
sewers have an
advanced
actual
countries.
Al-Qaeda's hideout in the base game, I think. So I just gotta walk through here, I think, and then I'll be out. If I remember correctly. Even though I actually never went through these sewers in the main game, I know of it because I've been watching a guy do a playthrough on the hardest difficulty.
The industrial technological system may survive, or it may break down. If it survives, it may eventually achieve a low level of physical and psychological suffering, but only after passing through a long and very painful period of adjustment, and only at the cost of permanently reducing human beings and many other living
Right
organisms
now,
to engineered
there we
products
go.
and mere cogs in the social machine. Furthermore, if the system survives, the consequences will be inevitable. There is no way of reforming or modifying the system so as to prevent it from depriving people of dignity and autonomy. If the system breaks,
What's up, Super Gaming? I told you about that asinine argument I had with Spencer about that book, right, Corbin?
what did he say?
He said that Ted Kaczynski didn't actually believe the things that he said. And just wanted an excuse to kill people. And he said that just because Wendigoon did a video that said, I assume as much. Because he's like, have you seen
Yeah.
Wendigoon's new video? And I'm like, no, I haven't.
Yeah, I've
after
seen what.
talking with you, I don't know if I want to.
I've seen that Wendigoon video. Yeah, it was dumb. He was like, "Oh, he's not really based. He's just justifying killing people and like all this other." But like, he's like clearly passionate about what he's talking about in the book. Like,
Yeah, like, obviously, neither of us like the murder parts.
like, I think it would make more sense to say that what he did is literally hypocritical and also like doesn't really serve to. I mean, like, it serves the point in showing what he that he thinks technology is dangerous, but like it's still hypocritical and goes against it. Like it's like using the thing to point out that it's bad, like Cuties does.
Right. Right. Taking Cyborg 009 is actually pretty good. Oh, yeah?
Do you think that Sigmund Freud's psychology is Jewish science?
Got any spare pussy cats? Got any pussy to sell? I just sold cats to this guy. And he's like, you got any spare pussy to sell? And then I gave him the cats, and Postal Dude's like, sounds reasonable.
If the system breaks down, the consequences will still be very painful. But the bigger the system grows, the more disastrous the results of its breakdown will be. So if it is to break down, it had best break down sooner rather than later. We therefore advocate a revolution against the industrial system. This revolution...
You can kill people in this game just by throwing scissors at them.
Well, it is called running with scissors, isn't it?
Well, that's the company, yeah. You can also shoot scissors out of your machine gun if you're playing on enhanced mode.
Kid mode. Kid mode. Kid mode.
Why are you saying kid mode over and over again?
Remember in PS1 Spider-Man?
Oh, yeah, okay, when you're going through the difficulties.
Kid mode. Kid mode. Kid mode.
Yeah, there was like a bunch of videos I was debating making when I got home. Like I was thinking of doing a video like talking about like human life and like the value of it and stuff like that, and then I was thinking about doing one.
That's
about,
a good
like,
idea.
Subjectivity. Basically, a lot of stuff that was inspired by our arguments with Hardluck.
That's good.
But then I'm like, I actually just want to play Postal for now, so that's what I'm gonna do.
Mm-hmm. Well, you do have a lot of Postal you need to play.
Yeah. Well, and I keep adding to it, right? Because I'm gonna play through Eternal Damnation now.
What?
Like, I keep finding more stuff, and then, like, it's funny, because I recorded a segment for Eternal Damnation where I just kind of half-assed it and read the wiki, but then I actually got the game to work, like, the mod to work on my computer, and I'm like, well, now that I have it working, I guess I gotta play it and do it proper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, Eternal Damnation is a fan-made mod, but I still feel like I need to include it because it was later re-released by Running with Scissors. Because they repackaged it with a later version of Postal 2 called the Fudge Pack. It's kind of like Duke Nukem Nuclear Winter and Duke's Caribbean Tour. Both of those were fan-made, but the actual developers later re-released it.
Look, everyone, Tom Cruise is packing fudge.
Well, and I feel like since, you know, like, I'm trying to make, like, the most extensive review on the Postal series, because I'm talking about the shit that nobody talks about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very few reviews mention Corkscrew Rules. Very few of them mention Eternal Damnation, and literally, like, none of them mention Postal Babes or Postal Mobile. And those I'm not going to be able to play. Those ones I am going to have to do the, you know, just kind of reading off the wiki and stuff. But,
Would Duke Nukem...
Babes, I wouldn't even be...
Would Duke Nukem kill Postal, dude?
Could Duke Nukem kill Postal?
I mean,
Absolutely.
would he?
Would he? No. Maybe.
I mean, probably he would, since Postal Dude's like a maniac that goes around killing people.
Yeah, that's true. More like Captain Dipshit, yeah? I think it's funny that you're like, I went on all the Hardluck's videos and disliked them. I'm like, okay, cool. You want a cookie? No, it is funny to me, though. And I do think it's funny that you said he's like the homeless me. He's just basically the homeless what I don't know why I did that voice for you. If anything, I should do like a fucking Australian type accent because you're from like New Zealand or something, right? I wonder if Milo Yiannopoulos came back to life because one of the Postal Babes killed him last time, but since it's a new day, I bet you he's alive again.
What's he doing that game?
I know. He's just at the gay club, and like When I came in, he's like, "Hello, darling." And then I pissed on him. He's like, "I'm actually not into this because you're not even black." No, he's not in here. I think he stays dead. Damn.
Rest in peace.
No, I think it's great that they have fucking Milo in this game. Like, that's... Like, Milo is, like, one of the most controversial right-wing commentators.
Yeah. I haven't heard about him since he started like since that one point where he was like getting
himself.
like the last time I remember him is like when he was like getting Christians saying he like was like regretting being gay or something.
Well, he's not gay anymore. He says he's ex-gay now and he runs a church. Well, no, I know you don't mind me doing that voice, Super Gaming. I'm just saying, you don't say retarded shit, so it doesn't make sense for me to do that voice for you. Oh, there he is. He's alive again. He's out here dancing.
Dude is basically the homeless
with a dildo.
It actually is fitting though for that one comment you read in that the comment you read in the cucumber voice. Like it was fitting there because he was like, "Dude is basically the homeless wet eye."
Yeah. Milo chasing me? No. Yes, he is. He's chasing me with a dildo. Because again, I pissed on him.
You sick bastard.
I'm coming for you and not in a good way. Now this guy killed Milo.
This is not to be a political revolution. Its object will be to overthrow not governments, but the economic and technological basis of the present society. That sounds like Tyler Durden's plan. In this article, we give attention to only some of the
Yeah, I
negative...
guess Duke would kill Postal Dude, though, because like I said, I honestly, what's up, Andy? I can't view Postal Dude as anything other than a psychotic maniac.
Yeah.
Like, just to me, like, a pacifist playthrough to me of this game is just, like, non-canon, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, given the events of Postal 1, there's no way this guy could be a pacifist. Like, I guess you could argue he got cured of his fucking psychosis, because, you know, he's, like, crazy and thinks everyone's affected by a hate plague, and that's why he wants to kill everyone.
Mm-hmm. He's probably also comparable to Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, we're good. I was stuck there for a second.
What if Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, Postal Dude, and Duke Nukem all met?
It'd be something. I feel like Duke would kill them both.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't even struggle with it, you know?
And also Bruce Campbell's there.
Yeah, why not?
And he's not Ash, he's just Bruce... and he's not Ash, he's just Bruce Campbell.
No, you didn't hear what Postal Dude just said, did you? Because, like, I
What
threw
did he
machete
say?
people, right?
What'd he say?
And I decapitated, like, 3 people standing in a row, like, at once with just one machete throw. And Postal Dude's like, it's like bowling, only cooler. By the way, the machete is also fucking great in this game. Because, you know, you just throw the machete and it comes back to you like a boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see Postal Dude start trouble in The Boys.
What?
Yeah, That sounds almost like an Edgar suggestion. Well, to be fair, though, like tonally, I mean, granted, if he started trouble, like Homelander would just like insta kill him.
Yeah.
Have to find a way inside the Lucky Ganesh.
What I like about the boys, though, is that they make. Oh wait, you didn't get that far yet.
Yeah, don't spoil shit, boy. Why can't I get in? Come on, there we go.
In this article, we give attention to only some of the negative developments that have grown out of the industrial technological system. Other such developments we mention or only briefly or ignore altogether. Huh? We mention only briefly or ignore altogether. Oh. This does not mean that we regard these other developments as unimportant. For practical reasons, we have to confine our discussion to areas that have received insufficient public attention or in which we have something new to say. For example, since there are well-developed environmental and wilderness movements, we have written very little about environmental degradation or the destruction of wild nature, even though we consider these to be highly important. Psychology of modern leftism. Almost everyone will agree that we live in a deeply troubled society. One of the most widespread manifestations of the craziness of our world is leftism, so a discussion of the psychology of leftism can serve as an introduction to the discussion of the problems of modern society in general. But what is leftism? During the first half of the 20th century, leftism could have been practically identified with socialism. Today the movement is fragmented and it is not clear who can properly be called a leftist. When we speak of leftists in this article, we have in mind mainly socialists, collectivists, politically correct types, feminists, gay and disability activists, animal rights activists, and the like. But not everyone who is associated with one of these movements is a leftist. What we are trying to get at in discussing leftism is not much movement or an ideology as a psychological type, or rather a collection of related types. Thus, what we mean by leftism will emerge more clearly in the course of our discussion of leftist psychology. Also see paragraphs 227 to 230. Even so, our conception of leftism will remain a good deal less clear than we would wish. But there doesn't seem to be any remedy for this. All we are trying to do here is indicate in a rough and approximate way the two psychological tendencies that we believe are the main driving force of modern leftism. We by no means claim to be telling the whole truth about leftist psychology. Also, our discussion is meant to apply to modern leftism only. We leave open the question of the extent to which our discussion could be applied to the leftists of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The two psychological tendencies that underlie modern leftism we call feeling of inferiority and over-socialization. Feelings of inferiority are characteristic of modern leftism as a whole, while over-socialization is characteristic only of a certain segment of modern leftism, but this segment is highly influential. Feelings of inferiority. By feelings of inferiority, we mean not only inferiority feelings in the strict sense, but a whole spectrum of related traits: low self-esteem, feelings of powerlessness, depressive tendencies, defeatism, guilt, self-hatred, etc. We argue that modern leftists tend to have some such feelings, possibly more or less repressed, and that these feelings are decisive in determining the direction of modern leftism. When someone interprets as derogatory almost anything that is said about him or about groups with whom he identifies, we conclude that he has inferiority feelings or low self-esteem. This tendency is pronounced among minority rights activists, whether or
Oh
not they
boy,
belong to the
you bet your
minority
sweet
groups
pippy they are.
whose rights they defend. They are hypersensitive about the words used to designate minorities and about anything that is said concerning minorities. The terms Negro, Oriental, handicapped, or chick for an African, an Asian, disabled person, or a woman originally had no
Oh, I
derogatory
see. It looks like
connotation.
Deadeye.
Broad and chick were merely the feminine equivalents of guy, dude, or fellow. The negative connotations have been attached to these terms by the activists themselves. Some animal rights activists have gone so far as to reject the word pet and insist on its replacement by animal companion. Leftish anthropologists go to great lengths to avoid saying anything about primitive peoples that could conceivably be interpreted as negative. They want to replace the world, the world primitive.
The World!
There's a lot of like weird misspellings in this. Like they want to replace the world primitive by non-literate.
That's not a misspelling.
Wait.
I mean, unless it is
Oh, I guess that
misspelled.
is.
Like that's not like a grammatical issue. It's just a different way of wording it than we would normally use, but it's still technically correct.
Who even is this? Yay, Corbin, way to go, mate. Fallen X100. They want to replace. Okay. They seem almost paranoid about anything that might suggest that any primitive culture is inferior to our own. We do
Yeah,
not
that's
mean.
pretty fucking cool. That the revolver in this game works like Deadeye. So like you lock onto targets and then you just fucking headshot them instantly, like when you use Deadeye in Red Dead.
Mhm. Any primitive culture is inferior to our own. We do not mean to imply that primitive cultures
Oh,
are inferior to ours.
get the fuck,
We merely
bitch,
point
go.
out the hypersensitivity of leftish anthropologists. What is leftish?
Is he meaning leftist, or is he just saying it's like leftish as in it's like leftist, but like just leftish?
That's what he is. That what that means? Leftish.
I don't
Like
know.
that's
Fuck
leftish.
me.
Those who are most sensitive about
Alright.
politically
Well, since I already
incorrect
cheated on this save anyway.
terminology are not the average black ghetto dweller, Asian immigrant, abused woman, or disabled person, but a minority of activists, many of whom do not even belong to any oppressed group, but come from privileged strata of society. Political correctness has its stronghold among university professors who have secure employment with comfortable salaries, and the majority of whom are heterosexual white males from middle to upper middle class families. Many leftists have an intense identification with the problems of groups that have an image of being weak, women, defeated American Indians, repellent homosexuals, or otherwise inferior. The leftists themselves feel that these groups are inferior. They would never admit to themselves that they have such feelings, but it is precisely because they do see these groups as inferior that they identify with their problems. We do not mean to suggest that women, Indians, etc. are inferior. We are only making a point about leftist psychology. Feminists are desperately anxious to prove that women are as strong and as capable as men. Clearly, they are nagged by a fear that women may not be as strong and capable as men. Leftists tend to hate anything that has an image of being strong, good, and successful. They hate America, they hate Western civilization, they hate white males, they hate rationality. The reasons that leftists give for hating the West, etc., clearly do not correspond with their real motives. They say they hate the West because it is warlike, imperialistic, sexist, ethnocentric, and so forth, But where these same faults appear in socialist countries or in primitive cultures, the leftist finds excuses for them, or at best he grudgingly admits that they exist, whereas he enthusiastically points out and often greatly exaggerates these faults where they appear in Western civilization. This, Thus, it is clear that these faults are not the leftist's real motive for hating America and the West. He hates America and the West because they are strong and successful. Words like self confidence, self reliance, initiative, enterprise, optimism, etc., play little role in the liberal and leftist vocabulary. The leftist is anti individualistic, pro collectivist. He wants society to solve everyone's problems for them, satisfy everyone's needs for them, take care of them. He is not the sort of person who has an inner sense of confidence in his ability to solve his own problems and satisfy his own needs. The leftist is antagonistic to the concepts of competition because deep inside he feels like a loser. Art forms that appeal to modern leftish intellectuals tend to focus on sordidness, defeat, and despair, or else they take an orgiastic tone, throwing off rational control as if there were no hope of accomplishing anything through rational calculation, and all that was left was to immerse oneself in the sensations of the moment. Modern leftish philosophers tend to dismiss reason, science, objective reality, and to insist that everything is culturally relative. It is true that one can ask serious questions about the foundations of scientific knowledge and about how, if at all, the concept of objective reality can be defined, but it is obvious that modern leftish philosophers are not simply cool headed logicians systematically analyzing the foundations of knowledge. They are deeply involved emotionally in their attack on truth and reality. They attack these concepts because of their own psychological needs. For one thing,
I would think any of Ted's books, by definition, just have to be public domain, right? Like, there's no way there's any copyright on any of those.
yeah, I'd imagine that. It would be funny if there was, though.
I don't think there is, because like anyone just does reprint things of them.
Their attack is an outlet for hostility, and to the extent that it is successful, it satisfies the drive for power. More importantly, the leftist hates science and rationality because they classify certain beliefs as true, i.e., successful, superior, and other beliefs as false, i.e., failed, inferior. The leftist's feelings of inferiority run so deep that he cannot tolerate any classification of some things as successful or superior and other things as failed or inferior. This also underlies the rejection by many leftists of the concept of mental illness and of the utility of IQ tests.
Not actually kill yourself, because K is the suicide button.
Leftists are antagonistic to genetic explanations of human abilities or behavior.
God fucking damn it.
When are you gonna start writing your anti-libtard novel? When's that coming out? When are you gonna start writing your anti-libtard novel? When's that coming out? I don't know. I guess I could write a book about that if I wanted.
Cyborg 009 versus Devilman fight each other. I think briefly, but it becomes one of those, like, Cyborg 009 versus Devilman and Mazinger Z versus Devilman have the same problem I have with a lot of versus movies where they just end up teaming up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at least in Cyborg 009 versus Devilman, they actually fight, whereas in Mazinger Z versus Devilman, the most fighting they do is Koji races Akira on a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. I'd read that manifesto. I, w- I do need to write a manifesto.
I do need to write a manifesto. Corbin, 2024. Well, you saw the Stephen quote that I referenced in the quotes section, right?
Yeah.
Where Stephen's like, this is what happens when beta males get access to the internet.
Yeah.
Because I was rewatching a lot of the old Malachi streams, and that's something Stephen said on one of them.
Honestly, it's funny though. I find the term I use the term cuckservative more than I use libtard.
Oh yeah.
Like, because I've already accepted that liberals are stupid. It's more disappointing to see like conservatives fuck up.
Yeah. And as much as I like the term libtard, right? It's a good phrase. I think cuckservative is more clever.
Yeah. And it's really spot on to the type of people that I specifically dislike in the conservative group. Like they're
Right.
cucks. The older I get, the more I realize that just everybody's probably wrong and everybody's disappointing.
Well, I mean, I think everybody has something to bring to the table.
Especially. This video is now banned. Right wing may be more un-American, might be more American because the leftists are immigrants from foreign countries. I mean, like everybody's in America is like an immigrant to some extent, I guess, but also like.
I mean, that is partially true. That is like part of how the left like gains traction is by like making immigration really easy and promising them a bunch of free shit if they vote for them.
Yeah, but it's like
or they'll let them come to their state so they can buff up the census because they can't actually have them vote in federal elections. But the way they get around that is they still use their numbers for the electoral college.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives their states more strength, even if the actual people can't vote in it.
Like but like I just feel like when it comes to left-wing problem, like I still admit that the problem isn't just like people from other countries, or obviously it's not just all about.
It's definitely not.
It's because we choose to deal with those people. Like it's because we choose. Like it's still. Like what can I say? People betraying their own race.
I would say cultural values, but you know, you could go that route if you want.
Have you studied the Electoral College? That's where the voting power is. That's how Trump won.
But yeah, the electoral college I think is a good thing because it does like take away from the tyranny of the majority, right? But the electoral college is still a deeply flawed system and can still be abused.
Yeah, I still don't believe in like obviously like I think it's obvious according to other things I've said that I still don't support a system like the electoral college.
I support it a lot more than I support direct democracy, though.
Mm-hmm. I just don't.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, I don't like any of these kinds of systems.
Right, but I will say that it is better to have that than to just have it be, you know, direct democracy, because then So basically, the only votes that would matter would be California and Texas and a couple other big states.
Mm-hmm. That's against Hillary. I think it's funny he specified where he's like, "That's how Trump won against Hillary Clinton 2016."
Is that a hybrid?
That fallen X100. I don't know. Maybe I don't friggin' think so.
Well, just that last comment just sounds like hybrid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is this hybrid? I have no idea. Literally, I tried to ask who it was before. I never got an answer.
What's the profile picture, Corbin?
It is an anime, like woman or
Okay,
something.
it's probably hybrid. If it's like Sasuke, then it's hybrid.
It's not I don't think it is Sasuke. It's some weird anime thing. I do like though that hybrid has been getting like more based on like certain things.
Yeah.
Where was I? I hope this is where I was at. I have no idea. Words like self-confidence, self-reliance, initiative, enterprise, optimism, etc. play little role in the liberal and leftist vocabulary. The leftist is anti-individualistic, pro-collectivist.
Oh, I got a weed whacker
He wants
now.
society to solve everyone's problems for them, satisfy everyone's needs for them, take care of them. He is not the sort of person who has an inner sense of confidence in his ability to solve his own problems and satisfy his own needs. The leftist is antagonistic to the concept of competition because deep inside he feels like a loser. Art forms that appeal to modern leftish intellectuals tend to focus on sordidness, defeat, and despair, or else they take an. I already read this. So it was here, okay. I think this is. The leftist's feelings of inferiority run so deep that he cannot tolerate any classification of something as successful or superior, and other things as failed or inferior.
You wanna?
This also underlies the
The
rejection
subtitles.
by many leftists of the concept of mental illness and of the utility of IQ tests. Leftists are antagonistic to genetic explanations of human abilities or behavior because such explanations tend to make some persons appear superior or inferior to others. Leftists prefer to give society the credit or blame for an individual's ability or lack of it. Thus, if a person is inferior, it is not his fault but society's because he has not been brought up properly. The leftist is not typically the kind of person whose feelings of inferiority make him a braggart, an egotist, a bully, a self-promoter, a ruthless competitor. This kind of person has not wholly lost faith in himself. He has a deficit in his sense of power and self-worth, but he can still conceive of himself as having the capacity to be strong, and his efforts to make himself strong produce his unpleasant behavior. But the leftist is too far gone for that. His feelings of inferiority are so ingrained that he cannot conceive of himself as individually strong and valuable, hence the collectivism of the leftist.
I like how Super Bob said sus gay in the chat. I don't know what he was saying that in reference to because he said it a while ago, but you know.
He can feel strong only as a member of a large organization or a mass movement with which he identifies himself. Notice the masochistic tendency of leftist tactics. Leftists protest by lying down in front of vehicles. Yeah, you know what I think the solution to that is?
How the fuck does Spencer not think this book is based?
Yeah, this is awesome. They intentionally provoke police or racists to abuse them, etc. These tactics may often be effective, but many leftists use them not as a means to an end, but because they prefer masochistic tactics. Self-hatred is a leftist trait. Leftists may claim that their activism is motivated by compassion or by moral principles, and moral principle does play a role for the leftist of the over-socialized type. But compassion and moral principles cannot be the main motives for leftist activism. Hostility is too prominent a component of leftist behavior. So is the drive for power. Moreover, much leftist behavior is not rationally calculated to be of benefit to the people whom the leftists claim to be trying to help. For example, if one believes that affirmative action is good for black people, does it? You know what? This really makes me think Wendigo did not read this book.
Right?
Does it make sense to demand affirmative action in hostile or dogmatic terms? Obviously, it would be more productive to take a diplomatic
Well, it's
and
funny because Spencer's like tried to tell me that like he did his book, and he said his book, he's singular, and I'm like, you know that he wrote multiple books, and he's like, it didn't say anything about his ideology, it just sounded like excuses to kill people. It's like, I don't know, this sounds like nothing but the ideology so far. So what the fuck is he talking about?
yeah, literally, there's been no justifications of murder or anything like that. Like, it's all been just pure. Like, basically, this is like the same as like the other philosophy books I read. Like, it's just based
Yeah.
and conciliatory approach that would make at least verbal and symbolic concessions to white people who think that affirmative action discriminates against them, but leftist activists do not take such an approach because it would not satisfy their emotional needs. Helping black people is not their real goal. Instead, race problems serve as an excuse for them to express their own hostility and frustrated need for power. In doing so, they actually harm black people because. Is this an audiobook right now? Oh, he has what book this is. Yeah, this is Industrial Society and Its Future.
Which I will do a reading of as well at some point.
Yeah. But, I mean, I guess you could say, I wouldn't say it's an audiobook I'm reading because I'm reading a bunch of random books and talking in between it, so it wouldn't work very good as an audiobook. It's just me reading.
And I'm also here, if I get pissed off at the game, you're gonna hear about it from me.
Yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah, and also you just Indo-Europeans. Why do you say that? This has to be hybrid. This is definitely hybrid.
There's no way that's not hybrid.
Yeah. He's just like Indo-Europeans.
Postmodernism?
Postmodernism?
Like I said, if I could see the profile picture, I'd tell you for sure, but I'm, not going to leave the game window right now, so.
It does look like it would be hybrid. Indo-European?
That doesn't even make any sense because it's Ted Kaczynski, who's American.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has European heritage, I would imagine. Although, I don't know. Is Kaczynski, is that like a Russian name or like a Jewish name? Because it sounds like it could be either to me, honestly.
Mm-mm. He said this is Sasuke's profile picture, you dummy. So yeah, that's definitely hybrid.
It is hybrid, I told you.
I couldn't tell if that was Sasuke. I'm looking at it up close. Okay, yeah, that's Sasuke.
Yeah, so okay.
Come on, watch Naruto. I did. It's from a later season, clearly.
What's that, Corbin?
It's from a newer season or series, clearly.
But yeah, it's from either Shippuden or Boruto. It's like a very late series Sasuke.
This is Sasuke Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan on episode 300. Well, that isn't that.
He probably means 300 of no, it's just Monkey Sharingan. I think he got that in the original. Like it's Rinnegan he gets in Shippuden.
Yeah, I didn't even get to episode 300 in Shippuden. I got to episode, like, I don't know if I got to 200. I'd probably somewhere around there. People, because the activists' hostile attitude toward the white majority tends to intensify race hatred. Uh, oh, Shippuden, he meant, he says.
Yeah,
Naruto
okay. So did
Shippuden.
Shippuden, okay.
If our society had no social problems at all, the leftists would have to invent problems in
Okay,
order to
this guy has
provide
fucking rockets. They're
themselves
the
with
heat-seeking
an
ones, too. Fuck me.
excuse for making a fuss.
That's really funny. One of the fucking Al-Qaeda terrorists told the fucking federal agents coming after us, he said, don't kill me, I'm a virgin.
And if our society had no social problems at all, the leftists would have to invent problems in order to provide themselves with an excuse to making a fuss. We emphasize that the foregoing does not pretend to be an accurate description of everyone who might be considered a leftist. It is only rough indication of a general tendency of leftism. Over socialization. Psychologists use the term socialization to designate the process by which children are trained to think and act as society demands. A person is said to be well socialized if he believes in and obeys the moral code of his society and fits in well as a functioning part of that society. It may seem senseless to say that many leftists are over socialized since the leftist is perceived as a rebel. A rebel. Revel? Nevertheless, the position can be defended. Many leftists are not such rebels as they seem. The moral code of our society is so demanding that no one can think, feel, and act in a completely moral way. For example, we are not supposed to hate anyone, yet almost everyone hates somebody at some time or another. Whether he admits it to himself or not, some people are so highly socialized that the attempt to think, feel, and act morally imposes a severe burden on them. In order to avoid feelings of guilt, they continually have to deceive themselves about their own motives and find moral
Fuck me.
explanations for feelings and actions that in reality have a non moral origin. We use the term over socialized to describe such people. Over socialization can lead to low self esteem, a sense of powerlessness, defeatism, guilt, etc. One of the most important means by which our society socializes children is by making them feel ashamed of behavior or speech that is contrary to society's expectations. If this is overdone, or if a particular child is especially susceptible to such feelings, he ends by feeling ashamed of himself. Moreover, the thought and the behavior of the over socialized person are more restricted by society's expectations than are those of the lightly socialized person. The majority of people engage in a significant amount of naughty behavior. They lie, they commit petty thefts, they break traffic laws, they goof off at work, they hate someone, they
Fucking
say
rockets.
spiteful things, or they use some underhanded trick to get ahead of the other guy. The over socialized person cannot do these things, or if he does do them, he generates in himself a sense of shame and self hatred. The over socialized person cannot even experience without guilt thoughts or feelings that are contrary to the accepted morality. He cannot think unclean thoughts, and socialization is not just a matter of morality. We are socialized to conform to many norms of behavior that do not fall under the heading of morality. Thus, the over socialized person is kept on a psychological leash and spends his life running on rails that society has laid down for him. In many over socialized people, this results in a sense of constraint and powerlessness and can't be and can be that can be severe hardship. We suggest that over socialization is among the more serious cruelties that human beings inflict on one another. We argue that a very important and influential segment of the modern left is over socialized, and that their over socialization is of great importance in determining the direction of modern leftism. Leftists of the over-socialized type tend to be intellectuals or members of the upper middle class. Notice that university intellectuals constitute the most highly socialized segment of our society and also the most left-wing segment. You know what? Everybody that reads this tells me that it's like, oh, it's basic stuff that I've heard a million times before, and that it's basic, edgy, like 4chan, whatever. But I don't get that impression at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing Spencer was trying to say is that he didn't say anything new or anything, and I'm like, do you say so? I argued with him for a fat minute because I thought he basically was just regurgitating whatever Wendy Goon said at that point. You know what I mean?
I mean, he did, yeah, but like I hear it all the time from people that are always like saying like, oh, I read it and I thought it was just a bunch of edgy stuff and it was nothing new and it was just not basic like
They just
edgy.
don't want to give him credit because he killed people.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, I think you can give him credit and acknowledge that the fact that he killed people is bad. Like, I think it's stupid to pretend that you can't, like, you know, do both.
Mm-hmm. It's funny though, like it's kind of similar to Varg.
Yeah. Well, you did it. Like, you never sent me it, but I know you did a debate between him and Varg.
Oh yeah, I think I did, or I tried, and one didn't work.
Yeah, you told me that you did, and that they got along a lot more than the other two debates.
Yeah, I think that. Oh yeah, that was like they just agreed with each other on a lot. What did you think of the big homie hybrid's explanation of Berserk's use of Gnosticism?
The big homie hybrid. What a hell of a way to refer to yourself.
The big homie hybrid. Hybrid said Dante's Divine Comedy novel. What?
Dante's Divine Comedy, like, I mean, it's a big ass poem. It might as well be a novel, but you know.
Yeah, that's it's. What does this mean? Hybrid said Dante's Divine Comedy novel. This sounds like something Edgar would say.
It does sound like something Edgar would say.
But like, what's he referring to? He said, "What did you think of Big Homie Hybrid's explanation of Berserk's use of Gnosticism?" Because he's explained it multiple times. Like, did he do it again recently in your Discord? I don't even know.
I don't recall.
Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. I think you meant to say. Yes, yes. He's like, I literally have this. Do you want me to read that?
Oh, is that what he's saying? Does he want you to read it?
Yeah, he just said Hybrid said Dante's Divine Comedy novel. If you want me to read that, I'll read it. I have it. I want to finish this page first, though. The leftist of the over-socialized type tries to get off his psychological leash and assert his autonomy by rebelling, but usually he is not on the deep fish tank server. I explained it. I'm not on that server anymore. I'm not even there. I was banned twice.
Yeah, we all were. You know, like, well, not all, but me and you were.
He said, all right, never mind. Assert his autonomy, but... Yeah, I get banned from everything, dude. I wonder why.
I don't know, Corbin. In my experience, you've always been a very charming and fucking empathetic individual, right?
In this server, you have to use empathy. Think about how your actions hurt other people.
Are you trying to push it on public?
Hybrid never gets banned. He's immortal. Or another way to look at it, he's a cuck.
Did Hybrid actually say that, or did you?
I said the last one.
Okay. It'd be really funny if he referred to himself as a cuck. I wouldn't. Like I don't know. Hybrid says all sorts of outlandish stuff. I wouldn't have put it past him, so it would have been really funny.
Yeah. Left, but usually he's not. He's a cockroach. That's what he said. He said that. He said he's a cockroach.
Hey, you're not a cockroach. You're a certified pro.
He said he. Wait, he's immortal like a cockroach.
Oh, I see. All right.
You can't kill a cockroach.
Oh,
But
little cocky roach.
little cocky roach. He's a leftist insect. You know, it's kind of like a baby, you know? A bug, you know, if you will.
Hybrid, have I mentioned I love you?
Yeah, Hybrid's great. Hybrid, I like you so much more now than I did, like... It's funny, like, I go off and on with how much... with whether or not I like Hybrid.
I'm in the gay bar again. I'm gonna see if Milo respawns.
But usually...
If he does, Milo respawns if you just leave the area.
Exactly 100, 100. But usually he is not strong enough to rebel against the most basic values of society. Generally speaking, the goals of today's leftists are not in conflict with the accepted morality. On the contrary, the left takes an accepted moral principle, adopts it as its own, and then accuses mainstream society of violating that principle. Examples: racial equality, equality of the sexes, helping poor people, peace as opposed to war, nonviolence generally, freedom of expression, kindness to animals, more
I want to see what dude says when I get cuffed. So I'm gonna let myself get arrested, but then I'm gonna load.
More fundamentally, the duty of the individual to serve society and the duty of society to take care of the individual. All these have been deeply rooted values of our society, or at least at its middle and upper classes. For a long time,
When I got arrested, Postal Dude said, "Come on, hurry up. I know you've got minorities to oppress."
these values are explicitly or implicitly expressed or presupposed in most of the material presented to us by the mainstream communications media in the educational system. Leftists, especially those of the over-socialized type, usually do not rebel against these principles, but justify their hostility to society by claiming with some degree of truth that society is not living up to these principles. Alright. Alright, Hybrid, since you mentioned it, I'm gonna read Dante's Inferno. Alright. Where is it?
Okay, since I never let myself get arrested, it's good to hear what he has to say.
I'm not reading the introduction, screw that.
Yeah, I'd say just get to the actual poem.
Should I even read the parts where they explain what the poem means, or just read the poem on its own? So they have it like both together.
Read it on its own, you know what I mean? That's up to you. When I read it, I'm just gonna read it on its own. But you do what you want.
Midway in our life's journey, I went astray from the straight road and woke to find myself alone in dark wood. How shall I say? What wood that was I never saw so drear, so rank, so arduous a wilderness.
Never see. My cataracts are blinding me.
Its very memory gives a shape to fear. Death could scarce be more bitter than that place. But since it came to good, I will recount all that I found revealed there by God's grace. How I came to it I cannot rightly say, so drugged and loose with sleep had I become when I first wandered there from the true way. But at the far end of that valley of evil, whose maze had sapped my very heart with fear, I found myself before a little hill, and lifted up my eyes, its shoulders glowed already with the sweet rays of the planet, whose virtue leads men straight on every road. And the shining strengthened me against the fright whose agony had racked the lake of my heart. Through all the terrors of that
I don't know why
piteous
you're
night.
bothering Awesome Gamer, Andy. I haven't even thought about him in forever. He's like, yeah, apparently Ethan Stokes, formerly Awesome Gamer, wanted me to tell you that he said thanks, but he has no interest in continuing YouTube. I never asked him to, Andy. Are you fucking putting words in my mouth?
He does that to literally at me all the time. He's always like saying like, Rabbit Waffles, why do you dislike this? Oh, Rabbit Waffles, I can't believe you did this. Oh, Rabbit Waffles. This is a swimmer who with what did he say something?
No, just in the game, there's these two guys talking, and this guy's like, did you see that show on TV last night with the guy and the funny thing that happens?
I'm gonna smoke again real quick. You know what? I kind of prefer it doing streams in a way where just like somebody I know just occasionally shows up every once in a while, but most of the time it's just me alone.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of better that way. It means I don't have to talk. I don't interrupt me reading as much anyway. Just as a swimmer who with his last breath flounders ashore from perilous seas might turn to memorize the wide water of his death, did I turn my soul still fugitive, red eye, from death's surviving image to stare down that past that none had ever left alive? And there I lay to rest from my heart's race, till calm and breath returned to me.
Red Eye there.
Yeah. Then rose and pushed up that dead slope at such a pace. Each footfall rose above the last, and lo, almost at the beginning of the rise, I faced a spotted leopard, all tremor and flow, and gaudy pelt, and it would not and it would not pass, but stood so blocking my every turn that time and again I was on the verge of turning back to the wood. I am wood, stupid. This fell at the first widening of the dawn, and the sun was climbing Aries with with those stars that rode with him to light the new creation. Thus the holy hour and the sweet season of commemoration did much to arm my fear of that bright murderous beast with their good omen. Yet not so much but what I shook with dread at sight of a great lion that broke upon me, raging with hunger its enormous head, held high as if to strike a mortal terror into the very air, and on his track, a she-wolf drove upon me a starved horror, ravening and wasted beyond all belief. She seemed a rack for avarice, gaunt and craving. Oh, many the souls she has brought the endless grief. She brought such heaviness upon my spirit at sight of her savagery and desperation. I died from every hope of that high summit, and like a miser eager in acquisition, But desperate in self-reproach, when fortune's wheel Gesundheit turns to the hour
Thank you.
of his loss, all tears and adoration, I wavered back, and still the beast pursued, forcing herself against me bit by bit, till I slid back into the sunless wood. I am wood stupid yet again, and as I fell to my soul's ruin, a presence gathered before me on the discolored air, the figure of one who seemed hoarse from long silence. He was the horseless headsman.
Let's save and then turn off God mode.
At sight of him in that friendless waste, I cried, "Have pity on me, whatever thing you are, whatever shade or living man." And it replied, "Not man, though man I once was, and my blood was Lombard, both my parents Mantuan." What? Mantuan. What? I was born, though late, sub Julio. I am sub Julio. I got TB for my bunhole. And bred in Rome under Augustus Gloop, a great big greedy nincompoop. In the noon of the false and lying gods, I was a poet and sang of old Anchises. What is this word? Noble son, who came to Rome after the burning of Troy. But you, why do you return to these distresses instead of climbing that shining mount of joy, which is the seat and first cause of man's bliss? And are you then that Virgil in that fountain of purest speech? My voice grew tremulous. Glory and light of poets now made that zeal and love's apprenticeship that I poured out on your heroic verses serve me well. For you are my true master and first author, the sole maker, from whom I drew the breath of that sweet style whose measures have brought me honor. See there, immortal sage, the beast I flee, for my soul's salvation.
So cool in this game.
I beg you guard me from her, for she has struck a mortal tremor through me. And he replied, seeing my soul in tears, he must go by another way, who would escape this wilderness for that mad beast that fleers. Before you there suffers no man to pass. She tracks down all, kills all, and knows no glut, but feeding she grows hungrier than she was. She mates with any beast and will mate with more. Before the greyhound comes to hunt her down, he will not feed on lands nor loot, but honor and love and wisdom, and will make straight his way. He will rise between Feltro, and in him shall be the resurrection and new day. Of that sad Italy for which Nisus died, and Turnus and Euryalus, and the maid Camilla, he shall hunt her through every nation of sick pride, till she is driven back forever to hell, whence envy first released her on the world. Therefore your own good, I think it well. You follow me, and I will be your guide, and lead you forth through an eternal place. There you shall
Wait, do
see
I have God mode
the
on again?
ancient spirits tried in
This
endless
gets turned
pain,
off?
and hear their
Oh. No wonder I
lamentation,
fucking died yet then.
as each bemoans the second death of souls. Next you shall see upon a burning mountain souls in fire, and yet content in fire, knowing that whatsoever it may be, they yet will mount into the blessed choir, to which, if it is still your wish to climb, a worthier spirit shall be sent to guide you. With her shall I leave you, for the King of Time, who reigns on high, forbids me to come there, since living I rebelled against his law. He rules the waters and the land and air, and there holds court his city and his throne. O blessed are they he chooses, and I to him, poet by that God to you unknown. Lead me this way beyond this present ill, and worse to dread, lead me to Peter's gate, and be my guide through the sad halls of hell. And he then follow, and he moved ahead in silence, and I followed where he led. The light was departing, the brown air drew down all the earth's creatures, calling them to rest from their day roving. All God's creatures fresh off the grill. So come on down to Mr. Meaty's, where people meet to eat meat.
You butchered the ending a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's where friends meet to eat.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. It might have been Friends. I fucked it all up. Listen to me, Republicans. Listen. I'm terrified. The light was departing, the brown air drew down all the earth's creatures, fresh from the grill, calling them to rest from their day roving, as I, one man alone, prepared myself to face the double war of the journey and the pity which memory shall here set down, nor hesitate nor err. O muses, O high genius, be my aid. O memory recorder of the vision, here shall your true nobility be displayed. Thus I began, poet, you who must guide me, before you trust me to that arduous passage. Look to me and look through me. Can I be worthy? You sang how the father of Silvius, while still in corruptible flesh, once to that one to that other world, crossing with mortal sense the immortal still. What if the adversary of all evil, weighing his consequence, and who and what should issue from him, treated him so well, that cannot seem unfitting to thinking men, since he was chosen father of Mother Rome, and of her empire by God's will and token. Both, to speak strictly, were founded and foreknown as the established seat of holiness for the successors of great Peter's throne. In that quest which your verses celebrate, he learned those mysteries from which arose his victory in Rome's apostolate. Apostolate? There later came the chosen vessel, Paul, bearing the confirmation of the faith, which is the one true door to life eternal. But I, how should I dare, by whose permission? I am not Aeneas. I am not Paul. Is it Aeneas? I don't. Aeneas. Anus. Is that blasphemous? Where the hell was I? I am not Paul. Who could believe me worthy of the vision? How then may I presume to the high quest and not fear my own brashness? You are wise and will grasp what my poor words can but suggest. As one who unwills what he wills will stay strong purposes with feeble second thoughts until he spells all his first zeal away. So I hung back and balked on that dim coast till thinking had worn out my enterprise, so stout at starting and so early lost. I understood from your words, in the look in your eyes, that shadow of magnificence answered me. Your soul is sunken in that cowardice that bears down many men turning their course and resolution by imagined perils, as his own as his own shadow turns the frightened horse. To free you of this dread, I will tell you all of why I came to you and what I heard when first I pitied you. I was a soul among the souls of limbo when a lady so blessed and so beautiful, I prayed her to order that and command my will called to me. Her eyes were kindled from the lamps of heaven. Her voice reached through me tender, sweet, and low. I was caught simping, an angel's voice, a music of its own. O gracious Mantuan, whose melodies live in earth's memory and shall live on till the last motion ceases in the skies. My dearest friend and fortune's foe, he strayed onto a friendless shore, and stands beset by such distresses that he turns afraid from the
Oh,
true
fuck
way,
you, bitch!
and news of him in heaven,
Fucking
rumors
game's
made
crashed.
dread he is already lost. That sucks. I come afraid that I am too late risen. Fly to him, and with your high
Riz?
counsel pity, and with whatever need to be for
Did
his
you say
good
Wiz?
and soul salvation, help him and solace me. Riz? Edward Rizerhands? It
Look
is
at
I.
duck shake.
Do the duck shake.
Yeah, no, do this duck shake. What the fuck?
From the true way, and news of him in heaven, rumors may dread he is already lost. I come afraid that I am too late risen. Fly to him, and with your high counsel pity, and with whatever need be for his good and soul's salvation, help him and solace me. It is I, Beatrice, who send you to him. I come from the blessed height for which I yarn. Love called me here when and when amid seraphim I stand again before my Lord, your praises shall sound in heaven. She paused, and I began, O Lady of that only grace that raises feeble mankind within its mortal cycle. Above all other works, God's will has placed within the heaven of the smallest circle. So welcome is your command that to my sense, where it already fulfilled, it would yet seem tardy. I understand and am all obedience. But tell me how you dare to venture thus so far from this wide heaven of your joy, to which your thoughts yearn back from this abyss. Since what you ask, she answered me, phobes near the root of all, I will say briefly only how I have come through hell's pit without fear. Know then, O waiting and compassionate soul, that is to fear which has the power to harm, and nothing else is fearful even in hell. I am so made by God's all-seeing mercy. Your anguish does not touch me, and the flame of this great burning has no power upon me. There is a lady in heaven so concerned. For him I send you to, that for her sake the strict decree is broken. She is turned, and called Lucia, to her wish and mercy, saying, "They faithful one is sorely pressed. In his distresses I commend him to thee." Lucia, I don't know what Lucia, uh, that soul of light and foe of all cruelty rose and came to me at once, where I was sitting with the ancient Rachel, saying to me, "Beatrice, true praise of God, why dost thou not help him who loved thee, so that for thy sake he left the vulgar crowd? Dost thou not hear his cries? Canst thou not see the death he wrestles with beside that river? No ocean can surpass for rage and fury. No soul of earth was ever as rapt to seek its good or flee its injury as I was, when I had heard my sweet Lucia speak, to descend from heaven and blessed seat to you, laying my trust in that high speech that honors you and all who honors it. She spoke and turned away to hide a tear. That shining urged me faster, so I came and freed you from the beast that drove you there, blocking the near way to the heavenly height. And now, what ails you? Why do you lag? Why? This heart stick, this heart stick, heart stick, this heart sick hesitation and pale fright. When three such blessed ladies lean from heaven in their concern for you and my own pledge of the great good that waits you has been given. As flowerlets drooped and puckered in the night, turn up the returning sun and spread their petals wide on his new warmth and light. Just so my wilted spirits rose again, and such a heat of zeal surged through my veins. What I was born that I was born anew, thus I began. Blessed be that lady of infinite pity, and blessed be thy taxed and courteous spirit that came so promptly on the word she gave thee. What is
You
it?
just had to be an idiot.
What happened?
Al Qaeda was like helping me out. And then Fred, like, he's like, okay, maybe I misjudged you, Al Qaeda guys. You guys are pretty cool. And then he's like, too bad that 72 virgins thing didn't work out for you. And he's like, wait, we were promised 72 virgins for killing infidels, weren't we? And then they're like, it's still not too late, and they turned against me.
That's funny.
Granted, I didn't have to fight them. Dude just ran out of there, so. All right, into the hellhole we go.
I am the way into the city of woe. I am the way to a forsaken people. I am the way into eternal sorrow. Sacred justice moved my architect.
Do you know your way?
I was raised here by divine omnipotence, primordial love, and ultimate intellect. Only those elements time cannot wear were made before me, and beyond time I stand. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Oh yeah, abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. Kick ass. That's
Yeah,
like that's like a famous thing for me because it's the inscription above the gates of hell.
yeah. Literally the sign to hell. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. That's like I love that part. It's funny though. I literally quoted that to my teacher, and my teacher was like, "What are you saying? Some emo shit?"
That's funny. I remember there's that episode of Malcolm in the Middle where the Krellboynes get mixed in with the regular students because the Krellboyne class has to close down.
Yeah.
And Dabney says that, and he says it to one of the emos that he's sitting, or not emos, one of the goths he's sitting next to. And the goth kid's like, oh, is that from the new Ministry album? And he's like, no, it's Dante's Inferno. And he's like, yeah, it's the inscription over the gates of hell. And then the fucking goth kid's like, wow, that's metal.
Yeah, I think it was funny though. My teacher didn't even know what it was from. My teacher didn't even get it. I thought it was funny because it was like a reading teacher too. I think.
That's funny.
But he might have. I think it was like a substitute reading teacher, so probably didn't know anything.
Let's befriend some of these hellhounds if we can, because that'd probably be better than fighting them. This looks like a fucking Morrowind dungeon.
Morrowind, or like Bor Ragnarok.
Or Ragnarok. See, Corbin, great minds think alike.
Have you seen the thing about Call Me Kevin where he wrote like a really bad creepypasta and like all the famous creepypasta channels read it?
No,
It's really funny. I should have shared that to the Discord. But I was surprised because the video was 3 years old. I was surprised I hadn't seen it already. But his creepypasta was really bad. But it's purposefully really bad. But it's really funny how many creepypasta channels read it.
Dude, these hellhounds are really fucking annoying.
Why do you hate dogs?
I hate when they're trying to kill me.
Damn it, where was I? I'm trying to find the spot where he says, abandon all hope, ye who enter. Oh, yeah, there it is. These mysteries I read cut into stone. Above a gate, and turning, I said, Master, what is the meaning of this harsh inscription?
Master! Master!
Promised only lies. And he then, as initiate to novice, here must you put by all division of spirit and gather your soul against all cowardice. This is the place.
Is a lot like a fucking Morrowind dungeon.
This is the place I told you to expect. Here you shall pass among the fallen people, souls who have lost the good of intellect. So saying, he put forth his hand to me, and with a gentle and encouraging smile, he led me through the gate of mystery. Here sighs and cries and wails coiled and recoiled, and of the stareless air spilling my soul to tears, a confusion of tongues and monstrous accents toiled. It was metal. In pain and anger, voices hoarse and shrill, and sounds of blows all intermingled, raised tumult and pandemonium that still whirls on the air forever, dirty with it, as if a whirlwind sucked at sand. And I, holding my head in horror, cried, Sweet Spirit, what souls are these who run through this black haze? And he to me, these are the nearly soulless, whose lives concluded neither blame nor praise. They are mixed here with that despicable corpse of angels who were neither for God nor Satan, but only for themselves, the high Creator, scourged them from heaven for its perfect beauty, and hell will not receive them since the wicked might feel some glory over them. And I, Master, what gnaws at them so hideously? Their lamentation stuns the very air. They have no hope of death, he answered me, and in their blind and unattaining state, their miserable lives have sunk so low that they must envy every other fate. No word of them survives their living season. Mercy and justice deny them even a name. Let us not speak of them, look and pass on. I saw a banner there upon the mist, circling and circling, it seemed to scorn all pause, so it ran on, and still behind it pressed. A never-ending rout of souls in pain. I had not thought death had undone so many as passed before me in that mournful train. And some I knew among them. Last of all, I recognized the shadow of that soul who in his cowardice made the great denial. At once I understood for certain these were of that retrograde and faithless crew, hateful to God and to his enemies. These wretches, never born and never dead, ran naked in a swarm of wasps and hornets that goaded them the more they fled, and made their faces stream with bloody gouts of pus and tears that dribbled to their feet, to be swallowed there by loathsome worms and maggots. Then looking onward, I made out a throng assembled on the beach of a wide river, whereupon I turned to him, Master, I long to know what souls these are, and what strange usage makes them as eager to cross as they seem to be in this infected light at which the sage. All this shall be made known to you when we stand on the joyless beach of Acheron, and I cast down my eyes, sensing a reprimand in what he said, and so walked at his side in silence and ashamed until we came through the dead cavern to that sunless tide. There, steering toward us in an ancient ferry, came an old man with a white bush of hair bellowing, "Woe to you, depraved souls! Bury here and forever all hope of paradise. I come to lead you to the other shore, into eternal dark, into fire and ice." You know, this whole thing is pretty friggin' metal.
Oh yeah.
Like, these descriptions have all been, like, pretty cool.
There's Champ. Do I gotta fight him?
And you who are living yet, I say, be
Oh boy.
gone from these who are dead.
It's gonna be tough.
But when he saw me stand against his violence, he began
Can I just
again.
get him with the thing?
By other windings and by
Yeah, I'm
other
gonna fucking
steerage shall you
I'm trying
cross
to beat
to
Champ
that
with that
other
cheating, though.
shore. Not here, not here. A lighter craft that mine must give you passage. And my guide to him, Sharon, bite back your spleen. This has been willed where what is
You know, I
willed
wonder
must
if he
be,
works like every other enemy in
and
the
is
game, though.
not yours to ask what it may mean. The steersman of that marsh of ruined souls,
No, he does
who
not
wore
sit
a
on
wheel
fire.
of flame around each eye, stifled the rage that shook his woolly jowls. But those unmanned and naked spirits there turned pale, with fear in their teeth began to chatter at sounds of his crude bellow in despair. They blasphemed God, their parents, their time on earth, the race of Adam,
And did their
and
parents
the
know about
day
the stuff?
and the hour, and the place that the seed and the womb that gave them birth. But altogether they drew to that
Damn!
grim shore where all must come who lose the fear of God. Weeping and cursing they come forevermore. And demon Sharon with eyes like burning coals herds them
Your
in,
camp is tough.
and with a whistling oar flails on the stagglers to his wake of souls. As leaves in autumn loosen and stream down until the branch stands bare above its tatters, spreads on rustling ground, so one by one the evil seed of Adam in its fall cast themselves at his signal from the shore, and streamed away like birds who hear their call. So they are gone over that shadowy water, and always before they reach the other shore, a new noise stirs on this, and new throngs gather. My son, the cautious master, said to me, all who die in the shadow of God's wrath converge to this from every from every clime and country, and all pass over eagerly, for here divine justice transforms and spurs them so their
Yeah, to be
dread
fair, I figured I'd
turns
have to
me.
fight Champ at the end, but still.
They yearn for what they fear. No soul in grace ever to no soul and grace comes ever to this crossing. Therefore, if Sharon rages at your presence, you will understand the reason for his cursing. When he had spoken, all the twilight country shook so violently, the terror of it bathes me with sweat even in memory. The tear-soaked
Yeah, if I
ground
build a fight
gave
with like
out
this,
a
I'd stock
sigh
up on
of
machine gun
wind
ammo.
that spewed itself in flame on a red sky, and all my shattered senses left me blind. Like one whom sleep comes over in a swoon, I stumbled into darkness and went down. A monstrous clap of thunder
Oh
broke
shit, there's
apart
multiple
the
phases.
wound
Fuck.
that stuffed my head. Dang.
You know what? I don't mind doing a heal after the first phase, and now I'm gonna save.
A monstrous clap of thunder broke apart the swoon that stuffed my head like one awakened by violent hands. I leaped up with a start, and having risen, rested, and renewed, I standed out the
Fuck, I'm gonna
landmarks of
die.
the gloom
Yeah, I'm gonna fucking
to
die here,
find my
Jack.
bearings there are as best I could.
God damn it.
And I found I stood on the very brink of the valley called the Dolorous Abyss, the desolate chasm where rolls the thunder of hell's eternal cry. Oh, what's this image?
Hello, hello, what's all this then?
This came with like an image of it's showing the like it's using a hill to represent like the circles of hell. Looks kind of cool. But it's like yeah, it's showing where everything's located. Like this is where the heretics are. That's where the Minotaur and the centaurs are apparently. The suicide woods, the waterfall, lots of cool areas. I don't know why they're giving away all the areas now though. Like this like shows like all the parts circles of hell we haven't even got to. Spoilers. So depthless, deep, and nebulous and dim, that stare as I might into its frightful pit, it gave me back no feature and no bottom. Death pale, the poet spoke, now let us go into the blind world waiting here below us.
How the fuck
I
do I
will
dodge
lead the
these green
way,
things?
and you shall follow. And I, sick with alarm at his new pallor, cried out, how can I go this way when you, who are my strength and doubt, turn pale with terror? And he, the pain of these below us here, drains the color from my face for pity and leaves this pallor you mistake for fear. Now let us go, for a long road awaits us. So we entered, and so he led me in, to the first circle and ledge of the abyss. No tortured, wailing rose to greet us here, but sounds of sighing rose from every side, sending a tremor through the timeless air. A grief breathed out of untormented sadness, the passive state of those who dwelled apart, men, women, children, a dim and endless congress. And the Master said to me, you do not question what souls these are that suffer here before you. I wish you to know before you travel on that these were sinless and
You know
still
what? Since I
their
basically
merits
did that,
fail.
I'm okay cheating to do the same phase again.
That these were sinless and still their merits fail, for they lacked baptism's grace, which is the door of the true faith you were born to. Their birth fell before the age of the Christian mysteries, and so they did not worship God's Trinity in fullest duty. I am one of these. For such defects are we lost, though spared the fire and suffering, hell and one affliction only, that without hope we live on in desire. I thought how many worthy souls there were suspended in that limbo, and a weight closed on my heart for what the noblest suffer.
Okay, I think
Instruct
that's
me,
about where I was at.
instruct
Alright, where's he
me,
at?
Master and most noble Sir, I prayed him then,
Alright, next
better
phase.
to
So,
understand the
say,
perfect creed that conquers every error. Has any by his own or another's merit gone ever from
and then we're
this
gonna go
place to
grab the other shit,
blessedness?
and then
He
turn
sensed
off
my
God mode
inner
and save again.
question and answered it. I was still new to this estate of tears when a mighty one descended here among us, crowned with the sign of his victorious years. He took from us the shade of our first parent, of Abel, his pure son, of ancient Noah, of Moses, the bringer of law, the obedient, Father Abraham, David the king, Israel with his father and his children, Rachel, the holy vessel of his blessing, and many more he chose for elevation among the elect, and before these you must know no human soul had ever won salvation. We had not paused as he spoke, but held our road, and passed meanwhile beyond a press of souls crowded about like trees in a thick wood. I am wood stupid, and we had not traveled far from where I woke, when I made out a radiance before us that struck away a hemisphere of dark. We were still some distance back in the long night, yet near enough that I half saw, half sensed what quality of souls lived in that light. O ornament of wisdom and of art, what souls are these whose merit lights their way, even in hell? What joy sets them apart? And he to me the signature of horror they left on earth is recognized in heaven, and wins them ease in hell out of God's favor. And as he spoke, a voice rang on the air. Honor the Prince of Poets, the soul of glory, that went from us returns. He is here, he is here. The cry ceased, and the echo passed from hearing. I saw four mighty presences come toward us, with neither joy nor sorrow in their bearing. Note well, my master said as they came on, that soul that leads the rest with sword in hand, as if he were their captain and champion. It is Homer singing master of the earth. Next after him is Horace the satirist. Ovid is third, and Lucan is the fourth. Since all of these have part in the high name, the voice proclaimed, calling me Prince of Poets. The honor that they do me honors them. So I saw gathered at the edge of light the masters of that highest school, whose song outsoars all others like an eagle's flight. And after they had talked together a while, they turned and welcomed me most graciously, at which I saw my approving master smile. And they honored me far beyond courtesy, for they included me in their own number, making me sixth in that high company. So we moved toward the light, and as we passed, we spoke of things that we omitted here, as it was sweet to touch on there. At last, we reached the base of great citadel, circled by 7 towering battlements, and by a sweet brook flowing round them all. This we passed over as if it were firm ground. Through 7 gates I entered with those sages, and came to green meadow blooming around. There with a solemn and majestic poise stood many people gathered in the light, speaking infrequently and with muted voice. Past that enameled green we 6
withdrew. Pretty easy too, I think. Like just like the first fight with her, but still. I wonder if the alternate postal dude is gonna team up with me against the bitch.
I think I'm gonna end my stream now.